seeing so many facilities and reviewing so many contracts and different settings, I now know exactly what I want if I were to take a full-time job. Whereas when I left residency, I had no idea what to look for, what the red flags were. I could have easily just walked straight into a full-time job that had landmines everywhere. But now I can, like, usually within just the reading the job listing or talking to a recruiter or whoever, I can tell right off the bat if this is going to be a dumpster fire.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Be Empowered, the podcast. This is a podcast where we dive into the realities of healthcare and entrepreneurship. We offer our opinion, unfiltered, unapologetic, and always with a dose of empowerment. We're here to amplify voices, both yours and ours, challenge the status quo, and explore what it truly means to thrive. So let's get into it. I'm Dr. Santoshi Bilakota.
And I'm Dr. Shala Mokta.
And today we have a very special guest. We have Dr. Genevieve Jacobs. She's an experienced locum tenens physician specializing in physical medicine and rehabilitation. Through her platform, drjacobshealth.com, and her engaging social media presence as the Locums Lady, she educates and empowers fellow physicians interested in exploring the world of locums tenens medicine. So, Genevieve, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you both so much for having me. I love seeing other women that are doing trailblazing stuff here in medicine. So I'm just happy to be here.
Do you mind just telling us a little bit about your journey in healthcare and what initially drew you to PM&R? Because I don't think I've seen too many physicians do PM&R.
Yeah, and I get that question a lot. Even other physicians will say to me, I wish I knew about PM&R because I would have considered it more as a specialty. I was actually only one of three people from my med school class that applied to PM&R, so it is a very small specialty. I did brain injury research at NIH before medical school, and in doing that research, I met my first physiatrist or PM&R doctor, also happened to be a female. And I just thought her job was so cool. And she got to work with brain injured patients. And that the first time I met a PM&R doctor, I was like, what is PM&R? Just like most people do. And then it was through that that I got more interested in the specialty and pursued it into medicine. And now I take care of stroke patients and TBIs and spinal cord injuries. And it's a hidden gem of medical specialties, in my opinion. I'm biased, of course, but I love my specialty.
There's a lot of overlap in what you do and what we do in neurology, right? So
I was just gonna
that
say that, yeah.
did you always start off as a locums tenens physician, or were you in traditional practice at some point?
So I graduated in 2020 at the height of the pandemic. I love traveling. I've always loved travel. I've been going to different countries since I was younger. My parents thankfully took me to a lot of places around the world. So I always wanted to have travel be part of my adult life. And it was in med school, actually, that I first heard about locum tenens work or travel medicine. I was like, this sounds amazing, like right up my alley. So I've been interested in it for a long time. And then when COVID hit and everyone was like losing their minds and no one knew up from down, we were all rethinking our whole existences. I was like, this is the perfect opportunity to go straight into locum work from graduation. Because, like after med school and residency, where you're kind of told where to go and what to do, you're in these places for years and years. I wasn't really ready to sign a 5-year contract somewhere or a 3-year contract and be somewhere that maybe I didn't like or in a location that wasn't perfect for me. So I wanted to kind of do some try before I buy situations. So I jumped right into it out of residency, which was scary. A lot of people are like, I don't want to, I'm too nervous to do it straight out of residency. But after my first assignment, I was just like, oh, I can do this. I'm totally equipped. I've got it down, my clinical practice. And so I felt really empowered after the first assignment. But yeah, I went straight into it after graduation.
And did you stay in locums or you changed positions to full time?
No, I've never held a permanent job. So I'm 5 years post graduation and I've never held a full time position. I interviewed for one or two, but they didn't fit with what I was looking for. And there's so many locum jobs available that I kind of have just gone from one to the next. And there's a lot of repeat facilities that I go back to that I love going to. There's a place in Alaska I go to pretty frequently. Montana I go back to on Friday. Actually, this is my 2 weeks off right now. But yeah, I've only done locum work. I will say in the beginning during COVID, which was surprising to me after I graduated, it was kind of hard to find a job because we deal with rehab facilities. They're not nursing homes, but a lot of the hospital systems kind of treated them as such. So they didn't want outside people coming in and potentially spreading the virus. So it actually took me like 10 months after graduation to land my first job, which was like, oh my God, I did all this work, for years and I'm in all this debt and now I can't find a job as a doctor. But I held out. And once that first job came, I was like, oh yeah, I'm doing the right thing. So
What is your schedule like?
it can be super variable. Like I'll take a job. My first job I ever worked was 5 days, 9 to 5. Usually there's no nights or weekends or call. You can take it if you want to, but it's usually pretty standard 9 to 5 work doing inpatient rehab. I prefer inpatient. I did work a job recently at the VA that was an outpatient clinic. So, people run behind and stuff that can take longer. And I'm doing injections and procedures and things like that can, take up time. But the hours are usually, pretty standard. And at least for inpatient, I come in when I want. We have team meetings usually a couple times a week, but it's pretty flexible, which I like.
Shala and I did a couple of episodes on women in medicine and some of the toxicity that we face. Do you feel like being a locum tenens physician has kind of helped in terms of burnout and again some of the other systemic issues that might not be favorable, being a
Oh,
woman in medicine?
absolutely, absolutely. Because I really only work like 6 or 7 months out of the year. I really prioritize my time off. I spend it with family, doing leisure travel, hobbies. I have a dog, so we're off doing adventures. And I've been able to explore so many other parts of being a human. Like I'm working on my pilot's license right now, which I don't think I could have done if I was working a rigorous academic full time job. I love to travel and go different places. I'm working on my business, my website, things like that. So those things, like having interests outside of medicine, allow me to prevent burnout from setting in. And then you really aren't dealing with a lot of the administrative burden that you get with a full time job. Like people are just grateful to have me there and helping them out. I'm not required to go to all these meetings and be appointed to various committees and things like that. People are just happy to have some help most of the time. So I think it really is a good mitigation for burnout. And as a woman, yeah, we face a lot of challenges being females in the healthcare system, and this is a great way to, you know, mitigate that as well.
What are some of the misconceptions that people have about locum tenens?
Yeah, great question. When I was first looking into this in med school and residency, I remember asking my attendings just to kind of like get a feel like, hey, have you heard about travel medicine or locum work? And, they were some older attendings and older administrators that were there answering my questions. And a lot of them said, oh, those are for people that have behavioral problems or can't get along or don't play well in the sandbox. I heard that a lot. And I was like, yeah, but I just want to travel. I want to see the country. I want to, not be tied down and explore how other people do things. So initially I was kind of like, well, there wasn't a great connotation, to be honest, associated with locum work. But I think in today's age and era, we're really changing the narrative on that. And I absolutely love doing what I do. I take a lot of pride in coming to each assignment with integrity and doing a great job. And people are always asking me to stay full time or come back. And I want to represent the locum world in a different way, a different light than it's been seen over the decades. And I just wanted to I just wanted to have some adventure. Like I went to Alaska in the middle of the winter by myself. That was a huge adventure, and that's why I wanted to do it. It wasn't necessary. I think a lot more people are doing it because they're interested in trying something different rather than I can't get a job somewhere else because I made a bunch of people angry at my permanent job. I think it's really changing.
I think a lot more people are doing it, especially like our generation and even like the younger generations. People are making the shift because it gives you some autonomy over yourself and your schedule. You're not kind of relegated to the politics of a single hospital system, as you said. And I think it could also be interesting. Like, when else are we going to go to Alaska? Like, I haven't been, And
Right.
seeing different practice settings also helps you realize what works for you and what does not work for you. So I agree with you. I think initially the biggest misconception I heard about locums is that it's for bad doctors. It's for
Mhm.
doctors who couldn't keep a full-time job. But I think that's quickly changing. Is there any criteria that you take into account when you're evaluating a new assignment? It seems like you've been on some consistent assignments, but how do you evaluate if a new assignment is for you or not?
Yeah, absolutely. And, even when I'm evaluating a new assignment, kind of to your point earlier, seeing so many facilities and reviewing so many contracts and different settings, I now know exactly what I want if I were to take a full time job. Whereas when I left residency, I had no idea what to look for, what the red flags were. I could have easily just walked straight into a full time job that had landmines everywhere. But now I can, like, usually within just the reading the job listing or talking to a recruiter or whoever, I can tell right off the bat if this is going to be a dumpster fire or not. Because some assignments are fantastic and amazing, and you end up being there a year and a half, like I've been doing in Montana. And some, like within the first day, you're like, oh, this won't be a repeat assignment for me. So, red flags that I look for are definitely the census. So I got smart fast and started putting into my locum contracts that I won't see more than 18 patients a day. For rehab specifically, especially at a freestanding facility, if there's some sick people in there and I can't manage more than 18, it's unsafe not only for my license, but of course for the patients and facilities. So if they're saying, oh, the census is 25 to 30, that's a red flag. If you're talking to a recruiter that's pretty new to that agency or whatever, and they might not know the right things to tell you or questions to ask, and there's a lot of turnover within that agency, like I'm talking to a different recruiter every time I'm calling, that's a red flag for me. If I'm doing direct contracts where I'm going straight through the hospital system or the CEO, if they don't necessarily know the terminology that we use in rehab, for example, there was like a CEO that had come from, like let's say a GI department or, something that was not related to rehab to my specialty, they might not know how to run a rehab facility well. So if they don't know the terms that we're using, in my specialty, those are red flags. I've kind of gotten to the point now also where I've been able to be picky about what assignments I take, and I don't take assignments that don't use Epic. I just find like the systems are so clunky, the communication really breaks down, like having Epic chat and just being able to find, whoever I need in a system that I don't necessarily know well makes such a difference that if you're not on Epic, it's kind of a no for me if that's the situation. And if another red flag is if like if there's a clinical person at the facility that isn't willing to speak to me, like if they're like, oh, we're just going to bypass you talking to the facility and just we're going to assign you there, that's a red flag. They should have time to pause and talk a little bit about the unit because you can get a feel for how it's being run.
What about the credentialing at different, hospitals and the licensures in multiple states? Has that been an issue, or how is that handled?
Yeah, I'm curious to see how many licenses you all have. I think I'm up to 11 right now, but I did finally get into the IMLC, which is the Interstate Medical Compact. And that obviously helps expedite things, but I have to keep a Google spreadsheet with like all my expiration dates for my state licenses and my DEAs because I was having to apply state by state. I delayed taking my boards by a couple years, and so you're not eligible for the IMLC till you take boards. And for PMR, we have oral boards as well. So that's a year delayed after the written. So it kind of took a while. So I ended up having to get the licenses one by one, but it was fine. I don't think it made a huge difference either. The agency paid for it, or if I was direct contracting, the hospital ended up reimbursing me. But how many do you guys have, just out of curiosity?
I have about 6, I believe, by now.
I have about 6 as well, Genevieve, but Shala and I just got into IMLC as well. So it's a lot easier once you're in that, because I've applied for a medical license recently through the pathway, and I got the medical license in like 2 days. It's
Yeah,
wild. And
it's
I'm like, I should have done
crazy.
this sooner. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it makes life a whole lot easier. I've kind of gotten all the licenses that I want at this point, doing them individually, but it is nice having the IMLC if I want something super fast. The DEAs also are hard to track because sometimes I'll transfer my DEA from one state to another, and then I'm like, wait, did I transfer that from Ohio to South Carolina? Or like, where is that DEA in cyberspace right now? But yeah, Excel, I use Excel a lot to try to keep myself in check.
You can transfer DEA from one state to another?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I didn't know that.
Yeah, if you're in a pinch, someone told me one time, and I don't know if this is how accurate this is or not, that it's better if you have the time to get a fresh DEA in each state, just so that if there is, like hopefully would never happen, like a malpractice suit or something, that DEA isn't affected in multiple states. Like if you pull it from another state. I don't know if, people say a lot of stuff. I didn't look into whether that was accurate or not, but I try to get a fresh DEA if I can. If we're like on a time crunch, then I'll transfer it.
Yeah, I mean, these things end up costing a lot, but you usually go through an agency, correct? Like they cover all of these costs for you?
I'd probably say 60% of the time I'm direct contracting actually, and the hospital reimburses everything. So I just like put it on my credit card, get the points, and then they reimburse me at some point. But the agency, yeah, will definitely cover all the expenses, and they'll do a lot of the paperwork. So that helps having going through an agency.
What about your malpractice coverage?
Always through the hospital or the locum agency, and I make sure that there's tail coverage included in any contract with malpractice, and it's a 1 million/$3 million policy with, yeah, the aggregate or whatever it's called. As long as those things are in there, then I'm like, okay. And I have caught a couple of times where they didn't have tail, but they've added it once I brought it up.
How are you directly contracting through hospitals without the help of an agency?
So it's kind of like I don't know if this is like guerrilla marketing or not, but I would see listings on New England Journal of Medicine Career Center. That's where I always go to look at locum and permanent jobs, and I would find permanent jobs. The one I'm working in Montana is how I this is how I got that one. I saw a permanent listing for a PM&R doctor, and I just emailed the recruiter. I said, "Hey, I see you have a listing for a permanent doctor. Would you consider hiring me as a locum till you fill that spot? Here's my credentials, here's my CV." And they were like, yeah, sure. So I got on a call with the CEO. We discussed rates. They ended up kind of offering me a lower rate at first. And I countered with a much higher rate, kind of thinking they weren't going to accept it. And they did. And now it's my most favorited site and highest paying because I just reached out to them.
I think I saw a TikTok video where you talked about doing it that way. Uh, so I've done it that way too. I think it's really great that you made a video about it. But uh, being in New York, there's so many hospitals around here. Like I've honestly sometimes just cold emailed hospitals saying, "Hey, are you looking
Yeah.
for anyone like per diem? Are you looking for someone to read your EEGs?" And I've actually gotten like a few gigs doing that. I mean, it hasn't
Yeah.
been consistent work, but
Right.
it's work. Get to kind of bypass the middleman. I feel like they're a little bit more flexible with payments.
Yeah, definitely. And I've even, going to national conferences, I found jobs that way. I've had previous med students that have mentored under me when I was a resident reach out and say, "Hey, I'm an attending now too. I'm going on leave. Can you cover me?" Or like people from residency if they need coverage, a lot of like word of mouth because PM&R is a small specialty, but yeah, conferences and like Instagram people have messaged me. So there's all kinds of unconventional ways that you can kind of find these direct contracts. And there's some really good Facebook groups out there. I always tell people to check out the physicians only locum tenens interest groups because a lot of people give good feedback and tips on there. And there's group chats within that Facebook group for different specialties, and people will post, "Hey, my group is looking for someone," or "Hey, I heard about this locum opportunity," and you can kind of explore those options too.
So how do you negotiate the rates between different facilities?
Oh, to be honest, I'm a pretty savage negotiator. So at this point, because I see so many different locum jobs for PM&R, I typically don't take rates that are less than $2,200 a day for an 8-hour day. The first job I ever took was like 1,400, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was shy. I didn't know like how to negotiate and know my worth and all this stuff. So now I kind of just go into it pretty aggressively and say, "This is what I'm getting paid at XYZ facility. If you're willing to match that or go higher, we can discuss further. If you're not, let's just save ourselves the time and we can stop here." And I just have to be ready to walk away from that job. There's no job that I feel like is um, enough to keep me there if it's low paying. So I just have to set my rate and my standard ahead of time and be willing to walk away. That's what I tell people is you just have to turn your back if it's not the right rate. And 9 times out of 10 the facilities will come running after you and say, "Actually, let's keep talking. Let's keep talking." So I've negotiated every locum job I've ever taken except one because it paid so well. I was like, I kind of have nothing else to add to this. Like, I'll take it. But every other job I've negotiated a higher rate.
We're going to pause here for this week, but don't go too far. We'll be back for part two next week and we'll tune into the rest of the conversation. Thank you.